Hey guys, welcome to part two of our massive Mortal Kombat Conquest bonus episodes. When last left off, we were talking about how the martial arts work in a show like Mortal Kombat Conquest, or maybe how they don't work, as you'll see. But as a reminder, this is the second half of the special. Matthew Dawkins, friend of the show, reached out to talk about the show. He's particularly excited about it. And during the course of this, we covered episodes 1, 10, 15, and 22, which I have since found out apparently are on Max. I had trouble finding it here in the UK, but apparently it's on Max now. So if you really want to watch along, you're more than welcome to. So with that, we will get to part two of Mortal Kombat Conquest.
Do we want to talk at all any more about that central part of the show, which is the martial arts? There's usually 2 to 3 fights per episode.
I was actually going to mention that is that I didn't notice it the first, but as I watched the episode, it became really clear that there is a fight in the first act, a fight in the second act, and a fight in the third act.
Yeah.
And how and I'm used to that. Right, I watch a lot of Kamen Rider or whatnot, where it's by the end of the episode, or Ultraman, where by the end of the episode you have to have a fight.
And you've played a lot of D&D.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's a amount of combat as pacing for an adventure that I'm also used to, right? So I mean, it didn't bother me per se, but sometimes certainly, the Bandit example being the most egregious, I think, off the top of my head, where it's okay, well, here's now where we have to have the fight, where literally any of the resolution would have made more sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it does get repetitive with
and I will say,
music.
The actual choreography for a cheap television show this time period was entertaining. Like the fact that they didn't have to do 3 fights every episode, and they didn't have to do it for 5 minutes at a time. Right? They could have. That could have been a place where they could have chosen a script. They said, no, this is an action show. It needs to do these action things, and we're going to do at least a decent job at it.
Because it is called Mortal Kombat, not Mortal Discourse. So you gotta lend into your name.
I agree, but again, there was an entire novel called Mortal Kombat did not actually feature the Mortal Kombat tournament at all. So there's precedent.
Rating out of 10 for episode 1 to hook you. If this was your intro to Mortal Kombat Conquest, would it work?
Well, do you mean if I'd watched it in 1990 whenever it aired, or do you mean when I had to watch it for the podcast?
1999 or whenever it was.
Yeah.
Would you have wanted to watch the next episode?
Much like now, I would have watched part 2 to make a decision.
Right.
And after watching part 2?
90s Chris would have given it one more because I would have liked the outfits. Current day Chris, as a more mature adult, if it wasn't for this podcast and getting to talk to you and Eddie about this, I would have turned this shit off and gone about my day. Right. I have no time, and I use my time to watch 4 episodes of this for my friend Matthew that Eddie asked Matthew to make us watch.
Right. My favorite / least favorite element of this was how late 90s, early 2000s it was, in the sense of every woman had half an outfit.
Yep.
And the way it was shot and framed and what they were doing on screen was it's so fucking clear what's happening here.
It's Baywatchy. Right. And there's so many TV shows that spooled off of that kind of shooting, that Playboy becoming acceptable. It is no longer just porn, it's also the articles. And this show does that. It isn't pornographic in any kind of
it is sleazy
prurient sense. It's sleazy, it's lads mags, it's hot girls draped over sports cars, basically.
Right.
I think I did read that some of the actresses in this were also actually in Playboy.
Yes, there's quite a few. Playboy Playmates appear in the show. People may be familiar with the names of Renee Tennyson and Jamie Presley. Jamie Presley's a fairly popular playmate of the time.
Who was in her own fighting movie, by the way. Let's not forget that.
Oh, no.
Oh, God, which game was it? It was a fighting franchise. They had Eddie's favorite master, Eric Roberts, as the bad guy. Donovan. Oh, I don't remember what it was called.
Dead or Alive?
Dead or Alive?
Yes.
Yeah.
She was in Dead or Alive as the wrestler from America.
The fighting game whose main feature is boob physics. Yes.
Yes. Eric Roberts, the journeyman actor, the actor's actor, Eric Roberts.
Eric Roberts doing martial arts. Yes.
Eric Roberts is by far the best American master.
And of course, the last episode, when we get onto it, has Playboy centerfold Angelica Bridges. Now, I say all these names as if I have any idea who these people are. And now I'm going to come back on the defense. And no, I promise I've never read a Playboy once in my life.
I'm
not at all familiar.
You've established that you're the researcher, so it's fine.
Exactly.
You've got covered.
I did research. It was painful. It was awful, and I would hope to never have to do this kind of research again.
So,
but
Eddie,
these
you never
are grenades I'll throw myself on for this podcast.
Okay.
I'm gonna pull you out of that trench, Eddie. You never answered if you would have watched this show as in the 90s if you'd seen the first episode.
Hilariously, if I saw it in the 90s, I probably would have been like, "This is stupid. I don't want to watch this." I'm more interested in it now. And I'm trying to decide if I like it ironically or if I just like it. I haven't quite figured out the answer yet.
And the answer for me is yes, because I did.
Right. Yeah, you did watch it.
I think if I could put this out here for you, I think, Eddie, that you like it now from the same sort of liking that you have for old school Doctor Who. Because even as I was watching it with some of the shoddy sets and everything else, I was feeling Doctor Who vibes.
Right. Also, there's Matthew mentioned before, but I definitely got the vibe as I was watching it. There's a fair dose of Warrior Princess Xena about this, in the sense of it's clinical historical, but it's basically fantasy with the mildest historical veneers, very kind of Conan the Barbarian-ish clinical history, combined with a sense of humor and recognizing that all of this is kind of ridiculous. You're right, and that's old school Doctor Who sense of playing it straight, but everyone involved knows exactly what they're making.
Yep.
And absolutely fucking Bruce Locke is just yeah.
Well, if you thought Bruce Locke was good, wait until our next episode, of course.
Right. Oh yeah. No, I'm looking forward to that. So episode 10, Unholy Alliance. Shang Tsung partners with evil sorcerer Quan Chi to lure Liu Kang from the Earth Realm, leaving it
Kung Lao
to attack.
Liu Kang isn't born yet, Eddie.
Kung Lao.
There's going to be Mortal Kombat fans writing in.
Apologies. Kung Lao. Kung Lao is once again plagued by visions of his own defeat, visions which Raiden tells him can only affect him when he's filled with self-doubt and uncertainty. Kung Lao is feeling the pressure of being the victor of Mortal Kombat and is being resentful of the sacrifices he's had to make because of it. I want to pause here. Episode 10, right? So 9 episodes have happened, well, 8 episodes, if you count the two-parter, have happened since the last time, and Kung Lao has progressed not one step in his character journey.
That was 90s TV, though.
Yeah. Well, you just wanted to drag it out, stretch it out as long
right.
as you could. Yeah, this is one of the worst ones for Kung Lao just self-hating. And hating his destiny. And you do need an episode or two where the character is suffering self-doubt.
Oh, sure.
It's all right. But you're right. This is episode 10. You would have thought he would have got a handle on it by now. I think the best thing about the opener, or the opening 10 or so minutes, outside of Quan Chi and Shang Tsung, of course, is Raiden is maybe at his most arch in this episode.
Yes.
He is he's just very, very cheeky, and I like that a lot. He's so self-amused. Now, what I do find very interesting is Raiden reminds him, your role is to train the future defenders of the realm. And that is not something he ever actually does in the course of the entire series. You might say Ciro and Taja are also defenders of the realm. I don't remember a point where Kung Lao is actually training them for Mortal Kombat. And there is no episode where he is roving around the wilderness. Now, this would be perfect for Mortal Kombat, where he is visiting this distant temple to recruit this ex-champion, who is evil, and it turns out I can't tame him, so I must defeat him, I must break him. You got those kinds of things going on, and it never happens. It is always about external threats stopping Kung Lao from doing his job.
Yeah, it reminds me a bit of like Star Trek Voyager, where it's like, here's this cool conceit that we set up that we're never going to actually address, or we're going to resolve it very quickly and therefore never come back to it. Yeah.
Would he be? He could have been training them during those 8 episodes where we haven't viewed anything, correct? Though.
Well, I have viewed them, although it was a very long time ago, and I can tell you this: it is. This is nitpicking, because really these episodes highlight the main characters' flaws, because they are things that they need to overcome to become the champions that they will eventually never be. And it is a way of inserting characters from the video games and interesting plot elements like the Black Dragon crime syndicate and things like that. All of these get thrown in the first 10 episodes.
All right, you mentioned an entire crime syndicate. For those of us that are not schooled in Mortal Kombat, Eddie is used to this. And if I was just an average listener to this show, who are they? I know the Black Sun Syndicate from Star Wars, but I don't know this from Mortal Kombat.
Same thing.
Yeah, they're the same thing. Prince Izor, when he got blown out of the sky by Darth Vader, fell through a wormhole, Farscape style, and ended up in Earthrealm circa 1600. The Black Dragon are a background element of Mortal Kombat. There's been the video games. There have been, I think, 2, maybe 3 characters playable that work for the Black Dragon. Kano is the most well-known one.
And the 2 cyborgs?
No, Marv. I want to say his name's Marvok or something like that. He's in Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, which is the Marvado. There we go. It is a video game very similar to this episode, because it's Deadly Alliance. It's Quan Chi and Shang Tsung team up.
Mm.
And I want to say Su Hao might be a Black Dragon member, and Su Hao is the most hated Mortal Kombat character by the developers of Mortal Kombat, to the point that they, on any subsequent appearances, he is just being murdered. I don't think he's playable. He's the only Mongolian Mortal Kombat character. But anyway, That's the Black Dragon Crime Syndicate. Drugs, guns, money. They are the villains in the background, but not the main villains. They are the humans that will side with Shao Kahn if they think they'll make a profit from it.
Right. Anyway, so Shang Tsung has Quan Chi lure Kung Lao away from Earthrealm into a parallel realm that contains everything his heart desires, including his simple pre-Mortal Kombat life and his beloved Jen.
Jen. Had to pick this episode for her reappearance.
Yeah, I do. The perfect realm that Kung Lao has been lured to does indeed have everything he's been longing for. In fact, whatever he desires appears before him. What Kung Lao doesn't know is that this isn't a parallel realm at all, but a 24-hour illusion being maintained by Shang Tsung. When 24 hours has passed, Kung Lao will become Shang Tsung's prisoner for eternity, which would leave the Earth realm without a defender in Mortal Kombat, and could ultimately free Shang Tsung from the Cobalt Mines to return to his destructive ways because reasons and what.
And then finally his soul will be mine.
This is
because he bartered it away.
Yes.
Which...
But Quan Chi says, well, what do I get from this Shang?
Yeah, it's funny Chris mentioned Doctor Who, and I hadn't put those two together, but as we're talking now, I'm putting it together, because this is straight up exactly what I love/hate about Last Doctor Who, in the sense of the rules of this episode are completely made up just to have a plot, right? Magic works this way because that's how the plot has to work, but I don't care, because I'm really here just to watch Shang Tsung and Quan Chi. So obviously either they're going to fuck or betray each other, or maybe both. I don't know which, but I just want to see what happens with that.
And it's not the only episode we've got, which
I
know. Ever since I was a child, and the reason I picked these episodes is my favourite episodes of He-Man and to an extent Thundercats when I was really little were the ones where the heroes would have to team up with a villain to overcome a bad villain. So He-Man plus Skeletor versus Hordak, as an example. Or the episodes where it is Skeletor and Hordak versus King Hiss or something like that. I always liked that because the Odd Couple episodes introduce interactions that you're not going to get from a vanilla, this is a monster, I must defeat it episode. And I do think Quan Chi, Adonai Meropis, whose again name I'm sure I mispronounced, so I apologize. He is another scenery chewer, but God, I love his Quan Chi. I love his costume. I mean, that is the best costume in the show, I think.
Yes.
Yes, it's completely made of fiberglass. I don't care.
It doesn't matter.
His makeup. He is such a distinctive looking and sounding character. And I mean, I've seen the actor and other things. I think he was a main villain in one of the seasons of 24.
Oh, okay.
And he is never quite as fun as he is in this show, where he's just, then you will seek to betray me. Everything is just so hammy, and I just absolutely love it. Although the one episode we didn't watch, or one of the episodes we didn't watch, was Quan Chi's introductory episode, which is on your DVD, Eddie. Where he spends the entire episode, I think, confined to a throne. He is just sat on the throne, commanding people around. But the people he is commanding are his sluts. Because,
God.
because despite this TV show not actually having nipple, not actually having gore, the two things that is quite happy repeating ad nauseum, especially from the mouth of Quan Chi, is, who are these sluts? Or whores. All of them whores. It's a really misogynistic...
Oh, God, yes.
Yes.
But almost juvenile misogyny. Because, the way they exploit the women is by putting them in scantily clad outfits and referring to them dismissively as sluts or whores. Right. And it's kind of... No one ever speaks up in their defense about this. I mean, even the heroes. Kung Lao doesn't say, "You can't speak to Jen that way." Because no one would say that about Jen. Jen's a good
one, yeah. For sure.
But certainly none of Quan Chi's sorceresses ever say, I think you'll find that we're all scrubs in this TV show, from Shao Kahn all the way down to Kung Lao and the bandits he meets in episode 1. So if we're sluts, you're a slut, Quan Chi. But it never gets to that point, which is a shame. I would have liked to have seen some women's lib.
Well, just look at the way even the heroes treat Taja. That is all throughout it.
This is the episode where Ciro says,
yes, it is.
You will be my slave.
Because she lost a bet.
Yes.
Yeah.
You will wait on me, hand and foot.
Yeah, that's not great.
Literally foot at that, too.
Yeah.
Anyway, so wrap this one real quick. Shocking nobody. Shang Tsung double crosses Quan Chi
for no reason.
Originally, Shang Tsung had agreed to share the secret of drawing life force out of one's victims and harnessing that power for one's own gain in exchange for Quan Chi luring Kung Lao out from the Earth realm. But once Quan Chi has this knowledge, however, he could become more of a challenge to Shang Tsung, so Shang Tsung reneges on his deal.
Yeah.
Makes no goddamn sense whatsoever. In the first place, if that was a problem.
Yeah, it shows Quan Chi was quite short-sighted to trust Shang Tsung, I think, more than anything else. But you need a source of conflict. At least it doesn't happen in the first 10 minutes like in the next episode we're going to talk.
Right. So a rebuttal for this, Quan Chi goes to the trading post and tells Taja and Ciro what's going on and what they can do to stop it. They don't believe him at first, because why would you? Because it's Quan Chi.
They have a fight.
Right, so they have a fight about it. But they realize if Quan Chi has come to them that much effort to foil Shang Tsung, they must be in serious trouble.
Yeah.
What?
Yes, I am your enemy, but Shang Tsung is Kung Lao's enemy. Therefore, you must trust me. Okay.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Fight. Now I trust you.
Let's trust the guy from the Nether Realm, the land of the dead.
Let's establish that Taja expressed concern about the missing Kung Lao.
Yes,
which Ciro
is one who noticed.
Instantly dismissed.
Yeah, Ciro was enjoying having his feet massaged.
And
this is too salty.
There's one thing I will say in very mildly in the show's defense, and again, this is extremely mildly in its defense. The one thing I kind of do like is there's an undercurrent of, yes, a lot of the, particularly the villains, but most of the male characters are very misogynistic. Every once in a while, the women characters will take advantage of that, like explicitly. In this case, Taja is actually correct to be concerned, and Zero is just a fucking idiot, right?
Yeah. It's not something that. It's the difference between having a misogynist or any kind of bigot who is at heart self-pitying or pitiful or deeply flawed and therefore overcompensating, and so you can basically look at them and say, well, you're the fool for thinking this way, instead of actually making it, let's say, Kung Lao be a misogynist. And to his credit, I don't recall Kung Lao, I may be wrong here, I wouldn't guarantee it, but Kung Lao, who is supposed to be the best of the best, doesn't go around calling sorceresses sluts like
No.
she.
If anything, the woman that's working with him tries to keep hitting on him. He's just like, listen, I really just want to fuck souls. I don't care about your weird fleshiness.
Yeah.
And she's like, all right, dude, I'm going to go over here then.
Yeah.
But I do like, while they explain later in the show, which I do enjoy this piece, there's a reason why she wants to do that. So that's a nice touch.
I mean, it's a weird distinction of, again, super clear. This is by no stretch of the imagination, by any definition of feminist masterpiece, right?
No.
There's still a lot of, it's super male gazy. I mean, I might be absolutely goddamn clear. But the show is at least making mild attempts to subvert that, right? So it's like, it's not, it could be much worse, is about what I'm saying here. And so like every once in a while, the women characters like, okay, so if you call me a slut, and if I'm going to dress like this, I'm going to use that to my advantage.
Yeah, and show you up for a fool.
Right. So I do at least appreciate the efforts. Again, that's only a short slice. When I watch the whole show, I'm sure it's not all great. And in fact, there's one character later on that's pretty clearly not great.
One.
Right. At least one.
I don't know if you noticed that in the parallel, I never saw this in the first episode, but in the parallel trading post, which is one of two main sets in this TV show, three main sets. We have the trading post, we've got the bazaar, which is the broader trading post, and we have the cobalt mines. Everything else tends to be surrounded with dry ice, so you can't actually see it.
Right.
But yes, in the trading post, there is a painting of the Baron. I don't know if you saw this.
Yes, I did.
It is terrible.
It's not good.
And I loved it. I loved it. The Baron, illusory Baron, is trying to charm Kung Lao and saying, you can stay here. You can marry my daughter. You've won me over. Welcome to the family, Kung Lao. And behind him is a painting by someone who clearly hated the Baron.
Right. Actually, since we're talking about trading post on the bazaar, I kind of fell in love with how stupid this show is, because that was when I realized, okay, I have absolutely no idea what time this takes place in.
Yeah.
Because the whole thing looks like a Ren Fair made up of people who just came back from a bondage convention.
Yes, it has a air of S&M, air of Ren Fair, air of where on earth geographically is this? There's a huge sense of confusion in terms of location. It has I guess, broadly East Asian sounding name in the form of it being, I think, Zhuzin, Zhuzin. So it sounds like it could be in China or perhaps Korea. And that is a guess. But, of course, the vast majority of the cast are Western.
Right.
So European or North American. But let's call them European if we're putting this in a time period.
Right.
And the costumes they are wearing, the ones who aren't dressed like monks or wearing sort of over-the-head tabards and vests, Taja is wearing a polo neck. A pink polo neck from a riding store, I'm guessing. And the the incongruity of a lot of the costumes in this is, for me, part of what gives it some charm.
Right.
Because you've got people dressed as if they're wandering around in the Dark Ages. That's your monks, mainly.
Yep.
all the way through to people who have just stepped out of Hot Topic. And that, for me, is a wonderful blend,
Right.
which,
And
again, appeals to
unlike
the role player in me.
other shows like, say, Firefly, where it's like we're going to co-opt actual cultural stuff and try to claim it as our own and synthesize it in a problematic way.
No.
This could have been like, what if we jammed all of Asia together? Instead, like, no, what if we just jammed literally everything together?
Yeah.
And like in a way that kind of helps diffuse it a bit. It's like we're not even trying to pretend to be any of these Asian countries. We're just literally a bunch of Americans slapping some shit together.
Yeah.
And that actually, I think, diffuses it a bit.
They were going to make a Mortal Kombat show where the majority of the cast were Asian, not in the 90s anyway.
Right.
I mean, some network might be like slightly more bold now, but certainly then.
Yeah.
And it kind of highlights the flaw of the historic setting. That's not to say there weren't Asian people in Europe at the time. Asian,
Yeah,
of course, is a pretty broad church there. But I guess looking for historical or geographical accuracy is maybe going a little too far outside the scope of Mortal Kombat. But you can hope. You can hope for some attempts at it, and this show just doesn't make attempts.
Well, that's actually what I appreciate, because the show's like, listen, we can't fucking do this. We're not gonna try. So instead, we're just gonna do whatever looks cool. And again, like, I have seen so many shows that are like, so we're gonna try to make it look, and I intentionally say this derisively, as generically Asian as possible, and just being horribly offensive in the process. Instead, they're like, no, we're just gonna treat all of history like it all goes into a blender.
Yeah.
And so it's like, because the question I had in my notes about this whole thing was, what year is this? I just don't know.
I get the impression it's obviously it's a cross between mainland European, Ottoman Turk, and Chinese is where I would roughly put it, but that is again I've said 16th 15th century maybe, and it's still through a very Arabian Nights style veil of and I mean a Western approach to Arabian Nights style veil of everything is spices in the air, everyone is wearing purple billowy pants. Everyone is fetching their rice out of amphoras.
Right.
But couldn't we just go, if Kung Lao was supposed to have been 500 years ago, we go 500 years from the date when from when the Mortal Kombat one first started backwards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that would be your time frame. They may not be able to pull it off, but that is your time frame.
Yeah.
That is.
Yeah. So this is what, about 1499.
Yeah.
There we go. That we've dated it. Carbon dated Mortal Kombat Conquest. Let's carry on.
Well, the rest of the episode is basically just they then go to the illusion, realize it's an illusion. That's why I talked about the bizarre scene, because they're like, this looks different than we usually do, and looks exactly the same as it always does, but somehow it looks different now. And then they convince him. They stab Jen. It doesn't work. That convinces him, Kung Lao, that it's not real. They pull him out with seconds to spare, and thus for ruining Shang Tsung's elaborate plans of trapping him in a bottle episode for his own power, I guess.
Yeah. Kung Lao at the end, racked with self-doubt, says, "Maybe I'm not the one," to Raiden. And Raiden in response says, "Maybe you're not. But then again, maybe you are." Doing his best Sphinx from Mystery Men to close out the episode.
And actually, the funny part is, like, this is when I actually started getting back on board with Raiden, because I really felt like Raiden's like, listen, I'm so tired of having this conversation. It's like, whatever, sure, maybe you're not, I don't know. And you're right, the trickster god starts coming out more in this, and I was like, oh, okay, I get where this is going now, is Raiden's going to just not quite abuse, but certainly a snark at Kung Lao until he figures his shit out. And that's actually an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. He's basically saying, stop being so damn self-pitying. You've got a job,
right?
And Yeah, I appreciate it.
Uh,
Two more episodes. Shall we get through them?
Yes, indeed. Episode 15, The Serpent and the Ice, which, as a note, on the DVD I have, it has the first two episodes, two-parter, then it jumps immediately to this episode. So it jumps over like a whole bunch of episodes to this one.
This is the episode for which the TV show is most well known,
right.
which is purely down to the characters and not to do with the plot.
Right, and what's more fascinating is that on the DVD, the episode is specifically retitled Sub-Zero versus Scorpion.
Yeah.
Which I think shows how iconic this episode is.
Yes, it was released as its own DVD. Absent of Mortal Kombat Conquest, it was released as its own thing, which, from the expression on Chris's face right now, which listeners can't get, is a why.
I'm going to wait till we get there.
Okay, so Sub-Zero and Scorpion band together in Shao Kahn's plan to destroy Kung Lao and conquer Earthrealm. Shao Kahn summons the warriors Sub-Zero and Scorpion to the Outworld, where he informs them that through enemies they will partner to destroy Kung Lao. Their payment for this task is they will share Earthrealm equally. Both reluctantly agreed to this agreement while simultaneously trying to figure out a plan to double-cross the other. So again, like right out of the gate, we're going to work together. We're not going to work together.
Yeah, it's. I counted. I took a timer. Their tag team dissension occurs within 15 minutes. I think it's at the 14-minute mark that they actually start their fight.
Yeah. Now, if I'm right, Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong. Sub-Zero is played by J.J. Perry, who was Sub-Zero in Annihilation, right?
No. Sub-Zero is J.J. Perry, who is Mortal Kombat Annihilation's Scorpion.
Right.
And the stunt double for Mortal Kombat's Johnny Cage. Scorpion is played by Chris Casamassa, who is Mortal Kombat's Scorpion.
So both of them came from the original movies.
Yes. I think Chris Casamassa is the only person who has basically been has been playing the same character. He was in the original Mortal Kombat movie, and now he is Scorpion again in the TV show.
And he was also he was the 2017 one, wasn't he as well? The most recent one.
That I do not know. I don't know if he shows up there. Unfortunately, I also understand they used the exact same CGI serpent harpoon thing, as in they used the exact same effect. It wasn't changed. They basically placed it over the frame effectively for Mortal Kombat Conquest. So whenever Scorpion does his harpoon, get over here, in Conquest, you are looking at the exact same effect as is presented in, at the very least, Mortal Kombat, the first movie.
So that's why he's in the exact same pose every time, is because they have one CGI rendering of this thing.
Yes, I mean, for the benefit of viewers, I know this isn't viewed, he will put his arms out and then he will twist his arms like that, pull his right arm back, and then go and shove forwards with his right palm, at which point Serpent makes itself visible.
Right. Anyhow, Shao Kahn summons... I already talked about that. Right, so Rebel Crossing, we got there. So Raiden gets wind of Shao Kahn's plan and alerts the three heroes. Raiden's advice to the trio is to learn as much as they can about their enemies in order to defeat them. That
makes sense. Yeah.
Nice.
So Kung Lao and Taja consult a monk knowledgeable of the Lin Kuei, which are the ninja group that these two stem from.
Sub-Zero does, anyway.
Oh, I thought... No, you're right, because as we established, Scorpion is one of the guards that got converted, right? Even though they wear similar outfits. I had confused about it. Every other ninja seems to come from the Lin Kuei, to be fair. Zero sets out to find a woman named Perrin who believes has ties to Scorpion. In a battle of wills, the Lin Kuei orders Sub-Zero to kill Scorpion, while Perrin, who turns out to now be Scorpion's second in command, is plotting Sub-Zero's demise. So not only are they completely betraying each other, but now they've gotten their subordinates in to help with the betrayal.
Yeah. Yeah, it breaks down pretty damn quickly for this alliance.
Right.
And for not really any good reason. This isn't the first episode. Obviously, Scorpion's introduced in the first couple of episodes. Sub-Zero is introduced in an episode prior to this one that we're not covering. The reason for their dispute is pretty loose. It's vague. Because, as we've established, Scorpion was introduced by Shang Tsung cursing Takeda the guard. So there is no real reason for Scorpion and Sub-Zero to loathe each other in this show.
Right. It's funny though. You said cursing Takeda the Guard, and in my head, sadly, I went to Akira. When I thought you said cursing Kaneda, I was like, Kaneda.
Kaneda.
Anyway,
Sub-Zero.
Sub-Zero. So meanwhile, Kung Lao and Tajiro learn from the monk that the Lin Kuei have a history of kidnapping teenagers and making them prisoners of the Lin Kuei. They surmise since Sub-Zero is a fighter from Earthrealm and aligned with Lin Kuei, it's possible he is once one of those kidnapped children. Following this idea, they visit the home of a family who lost a child to Lin Kuei years ago. And as they arrive, they come across two masked ninjas attempting to kidnap the family's daughter. Kung Lao defends the family and takes them to the trading post for safekeeping. Sub-Zero, who is trailing Kung Lao, sees him rescue the family, and something unfamiliar stirs inside of him. The family turns out is Sub-Zero's, and he now feels a debt of honor towards Kung Lao for saving his family. Kung Lao strongly suspects the Lin Kuei is involved with the kidnapping, which is exactly what Perrin had hoped for. Her plan to crush Sub-Zero involved finding his family in Earthrealm, kidnapping his long-forgotten sister, and using her to get him to surrender to Scorpion. Kung Lao, however, foiled this plan, bringing Scorpion, Perrin, and Sub-Zero to face off in a courtyard of the trading post. Fearing another kidnapping attempt, the teenage girl, Sub-Zero's sister, flees, running into the streets of Zhujin. Its seemingly kindly woman offers her shelter just before brutally killing her. The seemingly kindly woman turns out was Perrin.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop there because a lot of shit happens in a short period of time.
Yeah. This is... It's a little convoluted, really, because they could have achieved this same plot without Shao Kahn even enlisting the two ninjas. Right. This could have been Scorpion's ninja group, which he has somehow joined, at war with Sub-Zero's ninja group, and our heroes get caught in the middle. The fact that Shao Kahn has enlisted both these ninjas to attack Kung Lao, and then they never really get around to it. It kind of, again, nullifies the entire point. Their raison d'etre, they might as well just be at war with each other. Which, I mean, in Mortal Kombat video games, Sub-Zero and Scorpion have always been positioned as rivals or hated enemies. At various points it is Sub-Zero killed Scorpion's family, or Scorpion killed the last Sub-Zero, and so on. And it doesn't really translate very well for this TV series, unfortunately.
What is your favorite reason for their conflict out of the multiple reasons you just kind of listed?
I quite like the idea that Sub-Zero killed Scorpion's family. Scorpion made a deal with Shang Tsung or some other infernal force to give himself these fire powers, essentially. He was already a ninja, and therefore he holds an enmity against Sub-Zero, because the reason I like that, as simple as it is because I think on the face of it, it would be very easy to look at Scorpion and say evil, fire, Sub-Zero, good, cool, ice. And the idea that that's just the way I think people naturally attach elements to morality for whatever reason.
Right.
As far as considered more destructive generally.
Yeah. And I like the idea that neither of them is particularly good. So Scorpion works as a tool of vengeance. I think it's a nice... he looks like Ghost Rider. He might as well be Ghost Rider. And Sub-Zero as an assassin, it gives him an edge. Which they then try to do away with come Mortal Kombat 3, because the original Sub-Zero is dead by that point, and you're playing his descendant, or the new ninja to take up the mantle of Sub-Zero, at least. I think I'm his brother, in fact.
I know he's a relative, because that's part of the reason why I entered the tournament is to avenge the original Sub-Zero's death.
Yeah. Dig two graves, as they say.
So anyway, to kind of wrap up,
I am astonished by your knowledge, both of your knowledge of the lore of Mortal Kombat today. Just the snippets that are coming out of you.
I most of it I picked up in the past month and a half. So before this, I didn't even know there were two Sub-Zeros.
Well, I mean, just wait, because if you really dive into the weeds, you'll start questioning: is smoke one of the other Mortal Kombat ninjas, who gets introduced at the end of this episode to no effect, actually Sub-Zero, the previous Sub-Zero, or was he turned into Cyber Smoke, the robotic smoke that's in, I think, Mortal Kombat, I want to say Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 and Mortal Kombat Trilogy. But anyway, let's finish off this episode, Eddie.
No. Before you go on, who is what's his name? Snub Newbot, whoever that is.
Cybot.
Yes.
Noob Saibot has his own episode in this series, which I contemplated including. He is effectively in this series a Shadow Ninja, not the Nintendo video game Shadow Ninja. In the video game, he is a secret character, and his name is constructed from the developers' names spelled backwards, Boone and Tobias, which is why he's Noob Saibot. And he is just a palette-swapped ninja in Mortal Kombat 2 when he's a secret enemy that you can fight. You can't play as him. In later games, he is basically a ninja with elemental darkness as his power, so he can, disappear. He can teleport into darkness. He can create shadow, obtenebration, basically.
Yeah, some shit, right?
In this show, he's more oily. I don't think he's a human being. I think he's constructed from sort of elemental darkness in Mortal Kombat Conquest in his episode, but I would have to re-watch. But I don't think he has the same origin regardless.
Before we do move on, something pertinent to that episode, the fight scene between the two of them that built up to make this the episode everyone should watch.
Yeah.
Is it worth all of the, I'm going to say accolades, that it gets?
No.
It is better than most of the other fight scenes because you have two people who are actual martial artists fighting each other.
Yeah. Still lots of kip-ups, roundhouse kicks, crescent kicks.
Oh, sure. There's still some structural similarities to other fights. I mean, you can't avoid that. But it's if you're watching these, you can kind of see a quality shift from these are actors we trained to do those 4 moves to get this fight scene off, and people who actually know what they're doing.
I'll say that in this fight's favor as well, it is one of the few fights in the show that deals with special effects. Because, of course, Scorpion has his harpoon and Sub-Zero has ice. And so it isn't just a knockdown, drag-out fight. It is also a magic show. It isn't a terribly well-rendered magic show. But I like when... I don't think it happens in the movies, and I don't think you can do it in the video game, but Scorpion launches his harpoon and Sub-Zero freezes it.
Yeah.
He catches it and freezes it, and it breaks off. And I thought, that's a really novel way of doing it. So it is a margin better than a lot of the fights in the show, but I don't think I could... I could sell a Mortal Kombat fan on watching this show based on that fight.
Right.
Okay.
But I think the average person would rather watch a decent martial arts movie.
Right. I mean, like, the first Mortal Kombat movie just generally has better fight scenes.
Oh, I disagree. I disagree on that completely.
Oh, really?
Let's not get into that right now because
I haven't watched it in a long time, so maybe
there's juice there. Eddie knows my orange analogy. I kind of want to get to that now, but I won't. I'll be nice. Because you're a third-time guest. I'll let it go.
Because I haven't watched it in a long time, so it's very possible memory cheats on that front. I know that the most recent Mortal Kombat movie does have some fantastic fights.
Yes, yeah, that's proper wire fu style film.
As a newer person, really, to Mortal Kombat, I'd say I was like the Mortal Kombat noob on this episode.
The noob
How
cyber.
frequent? I like that. How frequent should the power use actually occur if it was in a television series? Like, is there a build up to it, or could Sub-Zero go ice blast, ice blast, ice blast? Liu Kang go fireball, fireball, fireball?
That's a very good question. Because in the video game, of course, you can just start doing it right out the gate. I mean, hell, you can pretty much prep it up so that as soon as you just fight, you're launching ice at someone.
Yep.
And in the TV show, where, as we have established, Kung Lao and co are scrubs, it immediately makes you question why the hell didn't Raiden go to Sub-Zero to defend Earthrealm or any of the Lin Kuei, because they can all throw elements around. So I appreciate the question, and I get that they can't just have it be David Copperfield from beginning to end, and we should be grateful for that. because mainly, it highlights how not impressive our main characters are.
Yeah.
So this episode stands out because of, and I again use this term loosely, spectacular nature.
Right.
In the episode, there are a couple of episodes of Reptile. Reptile spits acid, so really all they do is throw some dry ice at a wall and watch it hiss. There's Noob Saibot moves in and out of darkness. It's much like the Asamite episode of Kindred the Embraced. Quite frankly, he is the ultimate assassin. So
Sure.
you've kind of got to stretch your imagination as to how, because he gets beaten in one episode like the Asamite Kindred the Embraced. And so it goes. So I think they probably used it as much as they could. If they had been bold enough to use the characters more. Now, this is my... I mean, if you finish the synopsis, Eddie, of the episode,
Yeah,
I want to point out my armchair director, what I would have done from this episode on.
All right, so let's finish this up. So Sub-Zero witnessed his sister's murder, and so he kills the parent in retaliation. This infuriates Scorpion, who goes to the Lin Kuei and tells them Sub-Zero is turned against them and is now fighting with Kung Lao instead of against him. All of this infighting infuriates Shao Kahn, who is no closer to conquering Earthrealm, which was the whole point of getting these two assholes together to begin with.
Yep.
And so he orders both Scorpion and the Lin Kuei to finish what's been started. So Lin Kuei dispatches an army of ninjas to kill Sub-Zero, but they're no match for him. And so Scorpion enters the fray, and the two fight savagely, which is the fight scene we talked about. But there's no victor. Neither can land the final crushing blow, or fatality, if you will. When the fighters are momentarily distracted by Kung Lao, Scorpion vanishes into the night, as does Sub-Zero seconds later. The inability of these two warriors to cooperate has inadvertently spared Kung Lao and the Earth Realm from Shao Kahn's evil. Which means, effectively, the three lead characters are completely superfluous to this entire episode's plot.
Now, the Lin Kuei, the bit I didn't write it because I think I wrote that synopsis up or copied it from somewhere, is the Lin Kuei at that point say we're going to dispatch Smoke, our sort of special agent Smoke, to track down Sub-Zero and bring him to heel.
Right.
Fair enough. That never pays off. That never happens in this season. And at that, neither Scorpion nor Sub-Zero appear again in the show. And this is wish fulfillment kind of stuff now, because I get that a series 15 episodes into its run isn't going to suddenly introduce a new cast regular, or at least not this show. But this would have been a fine time, given Kung Lao's agenda of trying to find new defenders of the realm, to recruit Sub-Zero. They have helped Sub-Zero.
Yes.
Sub-Zero has helped them. He doesn't have to be a new regular with star billing, but he could be a recurring actor from this point who is helping them. I will help you recruit, more fighters. I will range out east if you range out west, kind of thing. And we'll meet again in a few episodes' time, at which point he's got a bunch of jobbers with him who you might be able to recognize from the video game backgrounds or something. And Kung Lao has hopefully recruited some more people instead of saying, well, I've still got Siro and Taja. Sub-Zero, I've been doing all the work. But the point being that this would have been a great axis point for the show to sort of step up a notch, like Eddy Fiore dying. Because to keep going back to Kindred the Embraced, I did watch the finale of Kindred the Embraced, because I think Eddy Fiore dying is basically the one episode before that.
Right.
And the finale really sets up a potentially interesting second season. With the introduction of Cameron and the Bruja basically having a different role in the city at that point. This could have been that for Mortal Kombat. What happens to the ethics of our characters now that you've got an assassin with them? What kind of challenges do they now need to face? Is it possible that he could teach them some more spectacular magical moves? Could Siro now basically be the precursor for Johnny Cage? Could he have some shadow kicks? Could Taja be a precursor to Sonya Blade? And so on. But no, he just disappears into the shadows and that's it.
Right.
I think it's a damn shame, because more people would have tuned in. I guarantee more people would have tuned in if Sub-Zero had become at least semi-regular instead of just appearing in 2 episodes.
That would. Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I actually think you're probably onto what actually happened here, because my gut says what happened is TNT went to the writers and said, "Why are there not more recognizable characters in the show? Everyone loves Sub-Zero. Make Sub-Zero show up in the show."
Yeah.
It didn't feel like it was organically built to. It felt like this was Sub-Zero was kind of shoehorned in. They got him for two episodes, filmed it, and then if they got a second season, then maybe they can negotiate an actual contract and write actual scripts of all with Sub-Zero. But this felt like, let's rewrite a couple scripts to get Sub-Zero in, because again, the main characters are shoved so far to the periphery of this episode. It felt like this was just a script written in isolation. It's like we could theoretically film without the other cast members even being involved. Maybe give them a break or whatnot.
And much how Matthew was saying earlier, they could have gone to the point where that could have been Sub-Zero's arc for the last 7 episodes. And Sub-Zero could have been out recruiting, popping up every so often. And the season finale could have been something completely different. Where instead of having, I'm going to say it was a dream that killed everything for the end episode, Sub-Zero has recruited his people, shit over a couple episodes, and the final episode is Sub-Zero equivalently succumbing to the dark side. And it makes it more of an emotional punch. Sub-Zero had his arc, and if the actor doesn't come back for second season, they write him out. But if he does come back, then you can carry on with that journey and then move the apocalyptic ending to like another season.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's bizarre, because like, as I was watching this, I definitely realized that there's kind of this bizarre thing of, this is a franchise that, due to its very nature, has a very deep character cast. It has introduced a whole bunch of non-canonical, let's say, characters on top of
Scrubs?
it. Yeah, just characters that weren't in the original games. And it's clear they don't know what to do with that deep bench they have.
Yeah. And I think one of the issues of that deep bench with the video games that had been released at the time was most of them were modern characters, or a lot of them were. You can't put Sonya and Jax and cyborgs and, well, basically over half of the Mortal Kombat 3 cast in a historic setting.
Why not? Literally, could they have fallen through some random portal from the outer gods and you have them show up for a while?
You can in Outworld, is the thing, because in the Mortal Kombat movie, it never feels that odd that Sonya, Johnny Cage, and Kano are there in Outworld fighting Goro and the rest.
Right.
But because they don't set this in Outworld, they set it in Middle Ages Earth. I guess they felt they had to cleave to that slightly. I don't know. I'm making excuses up for them.
It's such a weird film.
They plop through a portal and they pull a Time Lords move at the end where they erase their memories of ever having been here. Then you have them in the show running around. Then you get rid of them once you get the audience back in.
And I think that the reason they introduced Perron, not Ava Perron, as Scorpion's second in command, I guess she could be. Who knows? It was for the valid reason of the fact that these episodes sorely lack women with agency.
True.
And the utterly invalid reason that they needed yet more TNA, because she is yet another character who is just walking around in a bikini. So
costumes cost money, Matthew.
Well, yeah, that's why they had to use very little material. I get it, especially in an episode with so many ninjas. I mean, they even have tights over their noses and eyes, don't they? The Lin Kuei. All you can see is their mouths. We're going back to the S&M or BDSM thing.
I did notice. I'm glad you mentioned it, because I did notice as watching it is like the leaders of Lin Kuei have literally the opposite mask of the actual ninjas, because the ninjas, everything but their eyes and top of their noses open, and Lin Kuei, everything but their mouths.
Yeah, if you push them together, they would make a whole ninja.
Right, a complete face mask. Yeah.
I actually like those costumes. It's very camp. It's very silly. Their visions would be horribly impaired, but fuck it. I mean, at least they're distinctive. Yes. But again, there is a BDSM angle to it, which I don't think is undesirable in the show. It makes sense for Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat is supposed to be sexy and edgy.
One of the producers never said they just took all that out of their basement?
It would explain a lot for a lot of the costumes in this show. Let's go with that. I'm going to blame Jeff Meek. I'm going to.
Honestly.
I don't think it was the producers. I think it was he turned up on the first day of filming when they were doing the fight scene between Shang Tsung and Kung Lao, because clearly they filmed it chronologically. And he said, "Hey, have we thought about what people are going to look like in Jujin?" No, Jeff. Give me a second. I'm just going to head on. U-Haul van shows up a day later. I'm here with the costumes. You can get rid of the costume department. Send them back to WCW.
And the honking of the U-Haul horn. Chef's kiss.
It was very nearly a Dixie sounding horn, which I didn't want to put. Yeah, I didn't want to put at Jeff Meek's doorstep. I'm quite happy to say Jeff Meek has a BDSM wardrobe at home. But he doesn't have a U-Haul horn that goes.
He's sex positive.
Although it was filmed in Florida, so
there you go.
Oof.
All right, are you ready to do last episode?
Oh God, yes.
Okay, I'm going to plow through this whole summary.
Oh, no. You know what? One last thing. One
more thing.
Not only does the techno... I noted this. The techno grows incessant in the Sub-Zero versus Scorpion fight, because it is, I think, the longest fight in the show, outside of Shang Tsung versus Kung Lao at the beginning.
Right.
So, given that it is a 5-second loop, and I hear you listeners saying all techno is a 5-second drum...
Not wrong.
But this is particularly obnoxious. But this is my favourite Raiden sassiest dialogue appears in this episode. Kung Lao, in a huff with Raiden, because that's his general status, says, "You need to get a hobby or something." And Raiden says, "Have one. It's you." And Kung Lao seems to say at this point, "Fucking A." Now, that's how I heard it. I encourage people to listen out. Kung Lao basically moans, says "fucking A," and walks off. And I really hope that is an inadvertent capturing of a swear. And as he walks off, Jeff Meek, as Raiden, says, "Give my love to the Zeros," because this is just Kung Lao is going to Sub-Zero's family.
Right.
It's wonderful. It's sassy. And I love the "give my love to the Zeros," but I especially like the idea that the camera was supposed to shut off with a "have one, it's you." At which point Kung Lao or Paolo Montalban says "fucking A," wanders off. Jeff Meek catily shouts out "give my love to the Zeros," because he knows this dialogue is shit. and then they fade out. But yeah, maybe my favourite part of this entire series.
Honestly, I read that as probably Paolo going, "Fuck, I have to leave because I'm about to break down." I'm about to laugh on camera. I have to go now.
Up craft services.
Right.
Having said that, it makes me really wonder what the dynamic behind the scenes were between the cast. Because if you're done series now for 15 episodes up to that point, what would that have been like?
Well, yeah. I mean,
because you're on a shit show.
Based on the interviews I was reading and listening to regarding this, again, heavy researcher here, I get the impression everyone had a lot of fun. No one is talking about it as, "God, this was the worst show I ever worked on." This was silly, but it was a lot of fun. And no one got hurt because, other than, again, 3 performers, it's all stunt performers. So some of them might get hurt, but arguably that's part of the job.
Right.
So people love the costumes, people love the hammy acting. It was a pretty good payday because it was a 22-episode arc, especially for people whose main background was in theatre. So, I think there's generally a fair amount of goodwill, and this is why a lot of the cast were so confused. I think sometimes you see TV shows made, and the cast come away thinking, "That was fantastic," because it was such fun. And then they are the most confused people in the world when that TV show gets cancelled. I think it's the same thing for Firefly, in a way, and Farscape, to reference 2 things we've already mentioned. When the shows are an awful lot of fun to be on, the cast are often not only the last to know that the show is done or the reason why it's done, but they also really can't fathom why, because they've lived it. They've experienced this great time. Sometimes they'll describe it's like having a family that I'll never get to see again. And then they have to move on to the next job. And from all accounts, Mortal Kombat Conquest was just a lot of laughs. And that adds,
nice
I think,
hear.
a nice veneer to it.
And honestly, I feel like with shows, especially if you watch enough of them, you can start to see how the actors play, whether that's true or not, right? Obviously, you hope everyone's a professional, will do the job regardless. But again, for a long-running thing like this, over time you can kind of see if there's actual tension there or not. And it does seem like, especially at this stage of the game, that clearly, particularly Jeff Meek and Paolo are probably genuinely having a good time with each other. But honestly, all the leads seem to have a pretty good chemistry with each other.
So
it all feels very organic when they're on screen together.
It reminds me a great deal of one series I've been going through recently is NYPD Blue. Because it's all on Disney Plus now, and I don't. I'm obviously beholden to the Americans on this call. I know you're part British now, Eddie, but American by origin.
Yes.
There are certain cop shows that I don't consider propaganda because the protagonists are so flawed. And they're the ones I'm most interested in. And that may be me making excuses for shows that I like, but I get that. NYPD Blue is one of those shows I think is very well written, very well performed, and famously David Caruso, who went on to play Horatio Kane in CSI Miami, which is propaganda, was the protagonist, John Kelly, for the entire first season and about 2-3 episodes in the second season. Because his agent, or he, kept pushing for great and greater demands because he wanted to break his contract and get into movies. That's the story behind the scenes. He was possessed of such ego. And he has a reputation for that. How true it is, certainly I don't think anyone's ever refuted it. Now, David Caruso's relationship with the material, with all of that in hindsight, you can see the episodes where he's really into it. And I loved the character of John Kelly in probably the first 15, 20 episodes of NYPD Blue. I think he is brilliant. I think David Caruso is greatly underrated, Nicolas Cage style, as an actor. Because, yes, he overdoes it at times, but when he's on, he is ideal. And then you can perfectly identify, Simpsons meme style, the point at which his heart breaks, or in this case, his heart leaves the show. And it's maybe unfair, because I'm not an actor, to say he feels like he phones it in. He sounds tired. His character sounds disinterested. I don't know how much of that is the plot, how much of it is the actor, but I'm pretty sure you can see it sort of pouring through to the point that at some point David Milch and the other people behind NYPD Blue say, you know what, this guy's poison. He's actually going to kill the show. We're better off just cutting the contract and going with Jimmy Smits, which of course is always the better option.
Well, he becomes president one day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he does, and a serial killer in Dexter, to go back to that.
There's so many jokes I can now make about the American government, but you were saying, please proceed.
David Caruso is one of those excellent examples of someone who you can see has completely lost interest, and even the other members of the cast don't want to be around him anymore.
Yep.
Shows like this, Firefly, which I've got a pretty mixed relationship with. I'm not a huge fan of Firefly. I like the performances. I don't like the story or the world, really.
I've got some issues with definitely the creator, but also the lead actor. So it's a thing.
But yeah, there are shows where the love pours off the screen, and there are shows where it feels like a grinding industrial unit where people pieces of metal are grinding against each other in resistance, and this isn't one of them.
To stick with something you said, though, like the love from Firefly cast seems to have been there throughout the entire run of Farscape throughout the entire run, and
Yeah.
even afterwards.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. And Farscape, which is another show that we'll have to do on Genreless. If you'll ever have me back after this.
But we actually have done, but
We've
Oh no!
speaking of which, I wanted to revisit those, Eddie, because those were in our early days when we were scattershot, not as honed
Not
and
as-
professional as
we
we are
like
now.
we talked about revisiting some shows, yeah, and Farscape would probably be high on that list. Deep Space Nine as well.
Currently on a continuous loop on YouTube. You can watch them all. But Farscape is, in a way, a tragic show, not just because of its cancellation, which was brutally unfair, and
Yes.
down to a bad deal where Sci-Fi said to its new buyer, I think maybe Warner Brothers, perhaps, because they were negotiating over... No, it was a German company. They were negotiating over the amount of money that could be budgeted for Farscape and other shows. And Farscape's owners, I think Brian Henson or Jim Henson Productions, said, well, in that case, we'll just cancel it. No, it was Sci-Fi. The Sci-Fi channel said, we'll just cancel it then, as if to force the German company's hand. And the German company said, okay, that's money on our books now. At which point they tried to backpedal. They said, well, no, wait, we can negotiate. No, it's done now. We're good. It's cancelled. So it came out of nowhere. But yes, let's finish off this mountain of Mortal Kombat, shall we?
Right. Okay. So I'm gonna go through this in one click. This is episode 22, Vengeance, or I like to think of it, Transformers the movie. Meanwhile, Shao Kahn commences his invasion of Earthrealm and sends the Shadow Priests to slaughter the remaining Earthrealm warriors and those who betrayed him. Raiden confronts the Emperor and demands that he cease his invasion, warning him of the wrath of the Elder Gods, though this doesn't faze him in the slightest. Simultaneously, Kung Lao, Taja, and Zero are confronted by the Shadow Priests and evade them for a short period of time, though they become concerned over Raiden's whereabouts and return to Shirkana's colony, where they are surrounded by Shadow Priests themselves, who manipulate them into returning. Despite Raiden's warning to escape, Kung Lao, Kaja, and Shiro are attacked and killed by the Shadow Priests, enraging the Thunder God, who attacks the Emperor. After a vicious battle, Raiden gains the upper hand, and before he can kill Shao Kahn, his powers are suddenly diminished. Shao Kahn reveals his deception towards him, admitting to simply distracting him and allowing him to transport the hidden city into Outworld, and then preventing Raiden from using his powers per the rules set forth by the Elder Gods themselves. Soon after, a victorious Shao Kahn captures Raiden and imprisons him in his castle in Outworld, where he reveals each of the personal belongings of the Earthrealm warriors and Outworld traders, which are collected following the onslaught by the Shadow Priests, rendering Earthrealm completely defenseless. Finally, Shao Kahn mocks the fatigued and powerless Raiden, who is forced to reluctantly observe as Earthrealm is merged with Outworld.
So, for the sake of listeners, anyone familiar with Mortal Kombat, in the course of this episode, we see faceless Shadow Priests. These are characters that were introduced, I think, in the episode prior, but they have no character. They are basically phantoms. They look like a cross between ring wraiths, I guess, dementors, except they've got huge broadswords, which I guarantee every Mortal Kombat combatant wished they'd brought to a fight.
Right. Oh, shit, we can bring swords?
Yeah. They might as well be going around capping every single Mortal Kombat character. They'll just bring a machine gun to Earthrealm next time because it's the same effect. So they kill Reptile near the very start. They kill Vorpax, our newly introduced character. They kill Shang Tsung without much effort. But we've already established he's a scrub. They kill Quan Chi by cutting him in half, having him teleport halfway into a block of kobold, and one of his slut sorceresses. I think he even calls her in that episode. Quan Chi looks slightly irritated as the broadsword comes down towards him. He never does more emotion than that. He just sort of goes, also, Kitana, who was introduced in another episode and is being built up to become Kung Lao's new love interest, he's moved on from Jen, is killed.
Weren't there two actresses that play Kitana?
That I could not tell you offhand. I'm terribly sorry. I clearly skipped the Kitana episodes. But I'll say probably. Katano, so Shao Kahn's stepdaughter is also murdered by the Shadow Priests. And finally, Siro, Taja, and Kung Lao are all killed by the Shadow Priests. So pretty much every recurring or regular character except Raiden is killed by a faceless enhancement talent. And it's pretty bleak. It really is quite a depressing watch. It's an excellent... so it's wasted is the thing, because it's an excellent double act performance from Meek and Meek.
Oh God, yes.
As Jeffrey Meek plays Raiden versus Shao Kahn, and he plays them both distinct enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
That you
I didn't
don't
realize for a
notice.
while that it was both the same actor. It was the chin on Shao Kahn's mask. I finally realized because that he has a distinctive dimple in his chin. I was like, oh, that's the same actor.
And of course, we haven't mentioned this is our Mortal Kombat Annihilation connection, because to Kindred the Embraced, because Eddie Fury plays Shao Kahn in Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Yep.
But either way, Meek plays Shao Kahn perfectly. I prefer Shao Kahn to his Raiden, but I enjoy them both. At least Shao Kahn doesn't necessarily have to be Japanese.
Right.
But anyway, the highlight is Meek versus Meek, and if you haven't,
that solves one of the greatest issues for actors that have to be in masks that want their face to be shown. Is if you play two roles, you can have one that's in a mask and one that's just for face. Look at that.
Exactly. There's Omegis, who is a sorceress or sorcerer, who is introduced in a prior episode as one of Shang Tsung's ex-mistresses or wives. She is played by Playboy centerfold Angelica Bridges, and a good excuse for hot pants and butt cheeks.
Yes.
She appears to save the heroes and then does nothing. She just walks off into the woods.
Followed by the Shadow
Priests. Yes, but we never see them kill her, which is why some of the producers of this show have said she would be the person that reverses time or something like that at the beginning of the next season.
God.
Now, all of this sounds like crap, but I'll say this for the last episode of Mortal Kombat Conquest. This is the best use in the last 5 minutes of music in Mortal Kombat Conquest. They really have I've used the word bleak already, but they really hammer home the bleakness, the sadness of seeing every one of these characters dead. As Shao Kahn says, you're just pulling their items out of a treasure chest. Yes, dead. A sorcerer, dead. A traitor, dead. A daughter, dead. All of this, and it's so mechanically done.
It's pause on daughter dead though that shows he still has emotion. That is a nice touch for acting. I haven't talked a lot about the acting, but that was excellent for acting for that piece.
Yeah, he contemplated it. He contemplated whether he was sad and then swiftly moved on. And that, well done, Jeff Meek. You acted. It took you 22 episodes. No, Jeff Meek was excellent throughout, I think. And all of that comes to the point where, as you say, Shao Kahn has Raiden on his knees and basically says, now you will bow down to me. Earthrealm gets overrun and enters a non-canonical part of the Mortal Kombat history because Earthrealm never succumbs to Outworld.
Right.
So, that happened. In a better show, this would have been such a fantastic season closer.
Oh, God, yeah.
I really, on many levels, at least the last 15 minutes or so, love this episode.
Well, that's why I made the analogy to Transformers the movie, right? Because on some level, what's clearly happening is, shit, we have to get rid of a whole bunch of characters, right?
It's just done in such a horrible way. As in, not in a, oh my god, that's horrific. I mean, oh my god, that's horrific. There's such a terrible way of executing your main characters.
Right, because like I respect the audacity, but again, it has Transformers movie problem of characters that you should have beaten last episode even now suddenly can just destroy you because we only have so much time and we have to clear the shelves for the next set of toys or whatever. But I do appreciate, like I said, the last 15 minutes because the whole thing is structured and paced like, and then Raiden's going to pull us off, and then Raiden's going to, and then something's going to happen, and it just never fucking does. Because it's like, okay, we've got 10 minutes left, something could happen. Okay, but that time's getting low. Is something going to happen? Oh, nothing happens, right? And so it's a weird case of, I'm assuming it's accidental, of the writers using our knowledge of how this kind of genre TV works against us, because it's the season finale, has to be the big fight at the end. So at some point in time, they have to do this, and they just never get to it. And so it is. You're right. It's like, wow, this is a crap show that occasionally punches above its weight, and it's not good, but it was interesting.
This is one of the few times I'll say that I think it needed 3 more minutes worth of fight scenes, because there are characters that are killed too quickly for who they are relevant to the plot they've had up to now. Like Shang Tsung, you don't see him, he's just dead. Just dead.
This is the episode without fight scenes, really. Yeah. The one where they die, because the trick to killing a Mortal Kombat is use a sword. And in fact, no, like the Shadow Priests have magic as well, don't they?
Well, it's like in Buffy, when they ball out guns, it got serious. Up until then, they could do anything.
Yeah, it's like we were playing around until now with our fists and feet, and all of a sudden, Shao Kahn's using weapons, which is a nice tie into Mortal Kombat 4, because that is the first Mortal Kombat where characters have weapons. So they up the ante.
Sub-Zero gets an ice staff.
Yes, and oddly, in opposite world, Raiden has a hammer in this episode, and Shao Kahn has a sword. And in Mortal Kombat 4, Raiden has the mallet, the maul that Shao Kahn does in this TV. No, it's the other way around. Doesn't matter.
Right. They each have a weapon, and it's a different weapon in the game. Yes.
Yeah, there we go.
When Raiden pulled out that hammer, though, I felt like I was watching Harley Quinn for a second.
Yes, it was one hell of a maul. This is what you arm your druid with 16 strength with. Right. So it's obviously a horrible way to end a TV show, on a bit of a cliffhanger.
A bit?
Unless you take it as this isn't a cliffhanger, this is just the way the show ends. Our characters die, go home.
I'll be honest. I do think that if this show had persisted, there's no season opener that would do this ending justice, right? It would be a damn squib no matter what you did. So in a way, I kind of like the show ends here, because it's bleak as hell, but also it's like, okay, but you can imagine anything after that, and that's going to be infinitely better than they would have possibly have filmed.
I could write it here. I've just come up with something while you were saying that, Eddie. We move ahead to 500 years later. Earthrealm has now been a part of the Outworld, and while not everyone in Earthrealm is aware of why life has been so horrid since the Renaissance, there's some people who have cottoned on to the fact that it might be because of the sorcerers rampaging about the place. Raiden has been a prisoner in the Cobalt mines, of course, or Cobalt mines.
What is the Cobalt thing?
Because that's where magic doesn't work. Yeah, it saps your powers from you. For some reason, Cobalt is the element you want to avoid if you're a sorcerer.
Unless you're human, which is the only reason Shao Kahn's powers still work. Shang Tzu's powers still work.
Yes. So anyway, Raiden's been in these mines for 500 years, and he, at this point, during the upcoming celebrations of the upcoming Mortal Kombat tournament, escapes. He uses it as a distraction. He spills through to Earthrealm, and via some means or other, he expends the last of his godly powers that he was keeping in reserve to resurrect the fighters of the last Mortal Kombat tournament. However, here's the tragedy of it. They can't all be resurrected. In some cases, their souls pass in to new fighters. Therefore, Kung Lao's soul passes into Liu Kang. Taja's soul passes into Sonya Blade. Ciro's soul passes into Johnny Cage, because why not? Shang Tsung already had 1,000 souls in him, so Shang Tsung can come back as Shang Tsung, except horribly aged, like he is in Mortal Kombat 1. and Sub-Zero is just the descendant of Sub-Zero. Scorpion is undead anyway. Boom, you have Mortal Kombat 1. Now we are fighting to liberate Earthrealm from Outworld. All done in a double bill season opener. Perfect. Hire me, TNT.
I'd watch that episode. I'd watch those 2 episodes. Although I still stand by, having not heard your amazing one, going from the ones that we know before, it would have been a dream sequence, and he would have woken up going, well, that was a horrible nightmare.
Yes.
Because he had visions. They established visions first episode throughout the series when he has self-doubt, and he has self-doubt throughout the entire season. That would have been the accumulation of his self-doubt to then be confident in season 2.
Yeah, you're right. They're not as good as me, Chris.
I had this horrible dream and where Jeff Meek was arguing with himself for 15 minutes.
Raiden, why are you dressed as Shao Kahn? Because he is Shao Kahn, you moron.
It's the end of the person all over again.
Raiden tricks him into having that vision just to fuck with him. In the season 2, there's Raiden in a hot tub with sexy people laughing at him as he's in bed.
Welcome to my playmates. Welcome to the palace, Kung Lao.
Oh,
because you're my hobby.
Yes, yeah. Fucking A.
You would write the good versions. I would write the bad, cheesy versions.
Yeah.
They'll probably get made.
Yeah. Oh, well.
I know what the people want.
Right. So, in summary,
yeah.
This show, there is no world where I could look at this and honestly say it's good. I just can't.
No.
But it is extremely entertaining.
No.
For me.
Yes. I would recommend, against my better judgment, probably the episodes we watched. I deliberately didn't choose terrible episodes because usually when a Mortal Kombat Conquest episode is terrible, it's because it's just boring.
Yeah.
I went for episodes where there's a fair amount of ham on display or emotional beats, I suppose you could say the finale has. In truth, I think the only part I could really recommend in sincerity is the last 15 minutes of the last episode.
Just watch that. No context.
Because there is so much better martial arts content. There's better Mortal Kombat content. Hell, you could watch cutscenes from modern Mortal Kombat games and you would find it a more entertaining watch than Mortal Kombat Conquest. So I'm sorry I got you two to watch this, but it's revenge for Kindred the Embraced.
So I could not recommend this show at all. What I will say, and it's not even... It's not that it's bad. It's not even watchable. It's humorous at parts, but that's it. And one of the big things that I think we've tried to stress is that watchability is almost more important sometimes than deep bench of quality or humor. It's a fact that something is engaging enough to keep people keep coming back to see the thing that you're creating as it continues to go.
Right. And I mean, to be fair, like I definitely enjoyed this, but also this is definitely not a show you can watch back to back to back, right? I watched this one episode a day, and having space between episodes certainly helped me, because I think if you watch it on top of each other, like the obvious structures of the episodes, the fact that nothing happens certain episodes, it would definitely be to its detriment.
And you'd miss the really heavy themes if you didn't leave a day between watching each episode.
Ruminates on the complex moralities and
you
nuances.
Ruminate, I cogitate. But whatever we do with this show, I don't think it's going to make it any better.
No, I mean objectively, there's a reason why this show has generally fallen into obscurity. I can't in any way argue that.
That I find unfair, oddly, because I think there is something here. I think it's, I can consider games art because I work on them, and that doesn't mean I consider myself an artist. And I think looking at Mortal Kombat in its context, I think it's pretty damn rich to say Mortal Kombat Conquest is not as good as the rest of the Mortal Kombat content. It's, I think it, and I say this as a fan of Mortal Kombat. I'm not avid with it or anything, but I think that Conquest is no worse than MK3 or MK4 as video games, and I still think it is a better show all in all than the movie Mortal Kombat Annihilation. But temper that with the fact that at least Mortal Kombat Annihilation is over in 90 minutes.
Right.
And I'm in a lot of agreement with you, Matthew. I joked earlier about the show itself. It is better than Mortal Kombat 2 Annihilation. The thing is, this show was made with a love and care to the mythology they were building, because when it came out, this was one of the first shows, I think, to be based on a video game. So it was groundbreaking in that aspect. So they were making something that other people haven't done. Yep. I am going to take a step back to disagree with you slightly, to say that games are art, and you're making games, both of you, and you're an artist. And that is a craft that needs to be acknowledged and praised, because it changes and transforms the world. Mortal Kombat Conquest influenced future video game-based shows, for better or worse. It did that. And so it made...
that influence is, don't do this.
Right. Yes, that is just as important as saying something that say, we need to do this.
Right.
And that's huge.
I should not be so hasty to self-deprecate when it comes to my work, whether it's art or not. As I say, and as Eddy said earlier, Mortal Kombat is very much a seminal fighting game. Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter. Tekken is probably the only one of the big three that is, the only other fighting game that comes close to the impact Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter have had. Every other fighting game, Dead or Alive, Virtua Fighter, Battle Arena, Toshinden, all the SNK games, all of them, and there's a lot of fighting games I love. They are all second fiddle to Mortal Kombat, Tekken, and Street Fighter.
Yeah. And also, Mortal Kombat is the most of them, the ones that came out from the West primarily. So, like, it is the most Western and more specifically American of all of them.
But Street Fighter is still the one to come out with the best piece of associated visual media, which is and I don't mean the Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. I mean the animated movie, which I know I recommended to you, Eddy, a long time ago. Yes. I don't know if you ever saw it. It even has Bryan Cranston voicing Fei Long, but not under his name for union reasons.
What about, is it Fatal Fighter? Was that the animated?
Fatal Fury.
Thank you.
Yes, Fatal Fury, which is having something of a rehab because some of its characters are showing up in Street Fighter 6. Yeah, and of course, Capcom, I mean, this is going on very much into the weeds, and I'll need to eat something soon. Capcom is it's a very Japanese company. They take wide swings at what they're prepared to do, and then all of a sudden they will clamp up, go conservative, and won't wish to interact with absolutely anyone or any property beyond the ones they're focusing on. So when they gamble, they go all out. When they don't, they become streamlined, ultra focused. And Capcom, obviously nothing to do with Mortal Kombat Conquest, is going through an odd phase right now where, for instance, they are permitting the re-release of Marvel vs. Capcom video games, which they were not allowing for a very long time. And I don't know how much that is down to Marvel, but Capcom were always reticent. Capcom have also often been a bit sniffy about their Capcom vs. SNK games, their various other crossovers. And right now they seem to be, whether it's under new ownership or direction or what have you, they seem to be quite open to these things. So it'll be interesting to see what comes out of their stable. And Mortal Kombat has done the same thing from times. Of course, NetherRealm Studios has done stuff with DC, most famously, the Joker and Superman. But those, of course,
Injustice.
Injustice games. They were hugely popular.
Yeah.
And so occasionally you see cross-pollination. There was Street Fighter versus Tekken, so that's Capcom and Namco. So you never know what might come down the pipe, but I can be damn sure that it won't be another series of Mortal Kombat Conquest.
That is
No, this is
the
definitely
perfect note to end on.
Yeah.
timing on. So, Matthew, if people want to talk to you about Mortal Kombat Conquest or really any other fighting game media, where would they find you online?
Oh, they can head on over to the Onyx Path Discord and head into the off-topic channel, or the They Came From channel, because they came from the Steel Dragon Fighting Tournament,
Yes,
and that was Eddy's writing.
indeed.
So we can talk about it there. Or you can email me through MatthewDawkins.com. I'm always happy to talk to people about random crap like this.
Hey,
Uh,
Matthew, if I'm someone that is not familiar with Onyx Path and you say they came from, what exactly did they come from?
They came from all over the damn place, Chris. They came from Beneath the Sea, which is an RPG based on 1950s B movies. 1960s. They came from Beyond the Grave, which is very much based on Hammer horror, asylum horror movies. They came from Classifieds, the espionage genre. They came from the Cyclops' Cave, fantasy movies, everything from Sinbad and The Odyssey through to Xena Warrior Princess, and probably a bit of Mortal Kombat Conquest too. We've got a whole line of They Came From RPGs, and they have all done very well for us. So it'd be lovely if more people check them out.
Awesome.
Chris, if people wanted to give you money, where would they find you?
You come to my Patreon, and it's Harlem Unbounding with Chris Spivey. I drop occasional game stuff. Otherwise, you can buy stuff from my website, the usual splee that I always do. But if you want to come talk to me about fighting games, I'm going to direct you to go the Onyx Path in the off-topic channel and ask Matthew all those questions. Eddy, what about you?
You can find me in the Darker Hue Discord or the Onyx Path Discord, to be fair, either of those actually. But mainly you'll find me online as Pug Steady. That's my company, it's my website. That is PUG, like the dog, STADY, as in not waddly. So feel free to come talk to any of us. Thank you so much for listening, and we will see
One more
you.
thing.
Oh, yes.
Before we do that. If you've listened this far into this, what is probably going to be 2 episodes now instead of 1, what other topic or movie genre would you like for us to pull Matthew on to come and have a 3 to 4 hour discussion with us?
Yes.
Drop a comment in one of those Discords.
Let us know.
Make it something good. If it's something good, I'll talk about it critically. If it's something bad, I'll just have fun with it.
Right. See, you can get 2 options here. So yeah, let us know what you think, and otherwise we will see you next time.
Be seeing you.